Professor Rob Ouwehand.
And I am Barney Battista.
Today we are here to talk about writing mechanics, which means
the rules for writing, formatting, and formal writing style.
That's right. Now, style can mean two kinds of things. One thing it can mean is writing formally or informally, kind of your level. Is your writing more respectful or more casual? But style can also mean, is your writing beautiful?
That's right.
Do the words and sentences go together nicely? So today we're going to talk about formatting and also formal style, which is important for all kinds of writing. And the reason we're doing this is because
writing has rules, and different kinds of writing will have different rules.
That's right. And one of the things we're doing in this class is learning one set of rules. And as you learn those, it will help to remember next time you need to learn the rules of a different type of writing. For example, the rules for writing business letters at the office you work in someday in the future. Or if you get a job writing professionally at a magazine, they'll have their own set of rules.
That's right. Each situation is going to call for its own rules and standards. Today we're focusing on general academic and professional writing or formal writing style.
That's right. Now, there are some benefits to following the rules of writing as we discuss in this lecture. One of them is that writers who follow the rules show the reader that they're careful. If you have the kind of common mistakes that a careless writer makes because you don't know the rules, your reader thinks that you're careless.
That's right. Or it can just, even a smart person, if they're not following the rules of writing, even if their ideas themselves are good, failure to follow the rules of writing will make the overall quality of that piece of work look lower. So we don't want that to happen to
That's right.
us.
Learning these rules shows that you pay attention to details, and this will earn respect in an academic situation because all the other scholars have had to follow the rules themselves. And in a professional situation, it will earn trust from your manager or your coworker that this person is careful. I can let this person work without looking over their shoulder all the time.
That's correct.
Now, in this presentation, there is a lot of information. So there might be some spots where we go a little fast. If that's the case, please don't be afraid to pause this video and take a little closer look at the text that's on the screen, or go back a few minutes or seconds to listen again to what we're talking about.
That's right.
Now, on this page, we're going to have a link. So please click on that link, and there is a document that pairs with this slideshow.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the PowerPoint presentation or the slideshow presentation, you'll be able to click the link right here, and you'll be able to view that document. And if your professor has sent that document to you, this is the time to open it. Open that document now before you go on with this presentation. And the document gives instructions about what to do. Please read this handout. There are 11 different kinds of mistakes in the writing on this page.
It's a lot.
There are not just 11 mistakes, but 11 types. So, for example, if you find 3 spelling mistakes, well, you found one mistake 3 times.
Yeah, you found one type of mistake.
That's right. You didn't find 3 mistakes. So pause the video, look carefully, try to find all 11 types of mistakes on this page. And once you've done that, once you think you've found all 11, go back to the video and continue it. Now that you've spent some time looking for the errors on that page, we're going to go through them one by one and talk a little bit about why this is a problem, what you can do about it, and how to make your writing more correct for a professional or an academic situation.
That's right. So, the first rule that we're going to discuss is Capitalization. When to use big letters, when to use small letters. We want to follow the rules for which letters must be capitals. Off the top of our heads, right?
What are the rules for capitals? Well, this is a type of error that, unfortunately, I'm the one who made the document that you just checked, and I made it from the most common mistakes my students make. And unfortunately, my students keep on making capital errors. What do we capitalize?
Right. We say the proper names of people, places, things, and companies. That's right.
And these are things that you should know. These are things that everybody in Korea has studied since middle school. Titles, when you use them like a name, like, hi, Mom.
That's right.
Or, nice to meet you, Doctor. Then you would capitalize the D of doctor.
However, when you're not using them as a title, when you're just referencing those people,
So you'd say, I like my doctor, then doctor has a small d. Or my mom is waiting, has a small m, because you're not using it instead of their name.
That's right. The simplest example might be Dr. Park would have a capital D, but he is a doctor would have a small d.
That's right. Days, months, special days, but not seasons. We're going to go through these really quick. I'm pretty sure everybody has studied this while preparing for their sunang. Review this on your own time, if necessary.
That's right.
Anything to add, Barney?
Only just remember titles, since we are going to be doing a lot of essay writing in this class, and also we talk about titles. We talk about how to format titles as well here. Make sure that you capitalize titles of essays, titles of books.
The important words, but not the unimportant words like and, to, of. If you have trouble with capitals, if you didn't notice the capital mistakes on the handout, then pause the video here and take a more careful look. But if you are pretty comfortable with capitals, then you've got no problem here. In the handout, if you found every capitalization error, your paper will look like this.
Oof.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of them.
Yes, there are.
Okay. Next error.
End punctuation, right? All sentences must have end punctuation, and before we go on, there's 3 types. Can you think of what they are? Let's take a look.
Now this is another one that most students have studied more than once before they come to their first year of university. There are 3 kinds of end punctuation: a period,
An exclamation mark.
and a question mark.
A question mark?
Now, Barney, how often do you see exclamation marks in academic writing?
Very, very rarely.
Yeah.
Almost never.
Exclamation marks are pretty uncommon in academic writing, but you need something at the end of your sentences.
That's right.
You are more likely to see exclamation marks at the end of a sentence in advertising or something like fiction.
Right.
When you end your sentence.
That's right. Don't put a space between the last word and its end punctuation. For example, here you see the writer has put a space between excited and the exclamation mark, or period,
Yeah.
question mark, so on and so forth. We want to avoid doing that. The punctuation mark should be attached directly
Yeah.
to the end word of the sentence.
No space. No
Yep.
space at all. Okay. By university, you've studied this before, like I said. Barney, you're part of the hiring process here at Sungshil University.
That's true.
If somebody submits a job application with capital errors or end punctuation mistakes,
It immediately goes into what we call the circular file.
it does not go in the call them for an interview file.
No, the circular file is called that because that is the shape of the garbage can.
Yeah. So keep that in mind.
Paying attention to these sort of details demonstrates competence and carefulness, and those are the sort of things that employers, coworkers, other professionals will value.
Yes.
So,
If you found every end punctuation error on this handout, here's what it will look like.
Oof.
Yeah. These are easy to forget because periods are small. But it's important to make sure that your reader knows when your sentences finish. The next error is a little harder. This is called block style. And what this means is you must start a sentence on the same line as the one before it.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because people oftentimes are trying to make it look like they've written more than they actually had, or why this is a problem, but I've noticed many students forget to do block style, and they will start each new sentence on a new line. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. Now, this is a common mistake, but when you start a new sentence, do not hit the enter key. There are very few types of writing where every new sentence should start on a new line.
Right. I can think
A to-do list.
To-do list, maybe certain types of poetry.
Certain types of poetry, computer code.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, coding, you should start a new idea on a new line or a new command on a new line. But most kinds of writing, we don't. You only hit the enter key in academic writing and a lot of professional writing when you are ready to start a new paragraph.
That's correct.
Okay, put your new sentence on the same line as the sentence before it. And why do we need to do this?
Well, because this helps us to group our sentences into paragraphs, and it's really the paragraphs that show how our ideas are organized to the reader.
That's right. Now, if you saw our writing a paragraph video, you know that the most important sentences in a paragraph usually come at the beginning of a paragraph. So when you group your sentences together, it's easier for your reader to pick out the most important ideas first.
That's right.
If every sentence is on a new line, it's impossible to know which ideas are more important than others.
And also, if you're starting each new sentence on a new line, it can even be difficult to tell where your new paragraphs start.
That's right. Where your new idea begins and where your old idea finishes.
That's right.
So grouping your ideas into paragraphs and making it clear where your paragraph begins, it makes it easier for readers to read your writing.
That's
and
correct.
Also makes it easier to skim if somebody's in a hurry.
Yeah, and so this, like we said before, is called block style, and it is standard in most kinds of writing, including academic and business writing.
I would also say it's also standard in journalism. It's also standard in fiction writing. Other than, like I said before, coding and to-do lists, it's pretty much the standard everywhere.
Yes.
Get used to it. Errors in block style, once again, are all over the place here.
Yeah.
Next.
So the next one, number 4, don't use emoticons and text abbreviations, I'm sorry to say.
Never, Barney? Never, ever?
Well, these are the sort of things that in informal writing, they can actually be quite fun and expressive. But in academic and professional writing situations, they are not appropriate.
That's right. As we said right at the beginning of the presentation, writing has rules. Different kinds of writing have different rules. When you're texting a friend, there are almost no rules. You can do whatever style or grammar mistake you want as long as your message gets across to your friend. And in casual writing or on SNS, people break the rules all the time.
Sure.
But not at school or work.
No.
Unfortunately.
It is the same for emojis. Rob, do you like to use emojis when you text back and forth with your friends or your family?
I actually don't use them very much, but when I receive them, I just think it's so cute.
They are. They're really adorable and lighthearted and fun to use.
Mm-hmm. I would not send one to my boss, though.
Absolutely not.
At least not when we're talking about work stuff.
No.
Yeah. And that's the thing. One thing to remember about professional writing is you don't know who's going to look at it. You might be sending it to your boss, but your boss might have to show it to the company's CEO.
That's right.
And how do you look in front of your CEO if your writing is full of casual words or casual choices like emojis.
Right.
Text abbreviations, that means we're talking about shortened words like you see in a text message.
Yeah. And here's some common English text abbreviations, but of course they're all over Korean too, right? We don't say kakao talk bang, right? We say katok bang, right?
Yeah.
So this is common for every language, but it's informal and not appropriate for your professional and academic situations.
That's right. I would not use the phrase bepu in a job application,
No.
and you shouldn't use it in English either. So things like this, again, they're fun, they make language playful and interesting, but they're not a good fit for an academic or a professional situation.
Right.
Readers will take you less seriously.
Right.
And there are times when you don't want that.
Right.
Now, acronyms and initialisms.
Right. These are different. These are things like FIFA, UNESCO, NASA, or SNS, USA, DNA.
That's right. You can use these in academic or professional writing.
But first you have to spell them out completely. You have to spell them, you have to explain them the first time.
Yeah, so if you say FIFA, you need to say...
The first time you would say Fédération Internationale Football Association.
That's right. And after you've written it out one time, for the rest of your document, it's okay to just write FIFA.
Right. Usually, actually, if I could clarify, write it out in full one time. After writing it out in full, put the acronym in parenthesis, and then thereafter you can just use the acronym.
That's the rule for emoticons, text abbreviations, as well as acronyms and initialisms, which come along pretty regularly in academic writing.
Yes. Let's see. If you found all of the emoticon and text abbreviation errors in your document, it will look like this.
I think these ones are a little easier to find than some of the other ones, but there are quite a few. My personal favorite is OTL.
I like OTL.
I've always thought OTL is great.
Yes.
All right, so that's emoticons and text abbreviations. Fine in casual writing, not in academic writing.
Correct.
Or professional. Next.
Number 5 is a big one, and a lot of students make a mistake with this. This is indent new paragraphs. Now,
you need to start every new paragraph with an indent. And this is standard in most kinds of writing. Move the first line of text about 5 spaces over, and the easiest way to do that is with the tab button.
Right, the tab button, I'm sure you know, is in the upper left-hand part of your keyboard.
When you're handwriting, you still need to make an indent. Make sure it's big enough that it clearly looks like an indent. Sometimes a student tells me they indented, but it's so small, I wasn't quite sure whether they indented or they just accidentally put their pen down a little farther away from the line than the other ones.
Right. Again, be thinking 5 spaces.
Yeah, make it big enough it's clear.
Indents really, they make it easy to see where a new paragraph begins, and this can also help your readers if they're looking to skim through your writing for the most important parts. For example, just reading your topic sentences.
Not every type of writing indents paragraphs. For example, there are some kinds of business letter, and I believe there are some kinds of lab reports in sciences
That's true.
that don't indent their paragraphs. That's because they have other ways of showing that a new paragraph has begun, and they have their own rules, which also must be followed consistently.
That's correct. So, if you found all of the indent errors in your document, it will look like this.
And this one was a little harder because the writing is a little disorganized and it's hard to guess where the new paragraphs begin. But wherever you think a new paragraph belongs, there should be some space.
That's right.
Next. I hope most of you caught this mistake.
Number 6 is don't write Korean words in Hangul. We're going to
in
be
an English document.
Right. We're going to be assuming that this is an international audience for whom you're writing. Some of these people, some of your audience, will not know how to read Hangul, and so you're going to use what we call Romanization.
That's right. As I said earlier, you never know in a professional situation who might read your document. Sometimes they have to send it to the CEO. Sometimes it might even have to be read in court if there's a dispute. So it's important to remember that people you don't know might be reading it. So if you are 100% sure every person, whoever might possibly read your letter, is able to read Hangul, then it would be okay.
Right, but that's very optimistic.
Yeah, only in that situation, however.
Right.
And if that's the situation, why are you writing in English?
Right, and again, in this course, assume that if your teacher assigns you an essay or assigns you a writing project, assume you're writing for an audience who does not read Hangul.
That's right. Now, there are ways to deal with putting Korean into English letters. Don't just do whatever sounds right to you, because then you get chaos.
Right.
I used to live in Jamsil, and when I first came to Korea, they hadn't quite changed the signs over yet. So
That's right.
sometimes the map would say Jamsil or Chamsil
Yep.
or Jamsil or Chamsil.
Yeah,
And there were about 6 or 7 different ways of spelling Jamsil
it could be very confusing.
that were all, one was on the map and one was on the address card and one was on the subway sign.
Right.
So it was really confusing. And if everybody's following one system, it's a lot simpler.
Right.
Revised Romanization is the system they started in 2000 during the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup.
Right.
And there are a few other systems that people use. There are some that are preferred in scholarship or history writing.
Right.
But anything written, published by the Korean government, anything made for tourists, as well as all of the road signs and maps around Korea follow this system.
Right.
It's not hard to learn, and if you follow it consistently, you will have minimal confusion.
That's right.
Look it up if you need to. It doesn't take long to memorize it. Sejong said it's easy to learn to read Korean. It's also easy to learn to remember Romanization.
That's right.
Also remember
Remember that sometimes a thing's English name is not related to its Korean name. So look it up instead of translating directly. This is very important.
Yes. One example of this is in movies. There was a famous movie, Myeongrang. Really
Raging-
good movie. The English title is completely unconnected to the Korean title.
That's right. The English title was Raging Currents.
Roaring Currents, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some quite famous Korean films and books and things
Sure.
where the English translated title is not a direct translation.
Right. Kwaemul, the movie about the monster, was translated as the host in its English title also. Yeah, so there's lots of cases like this. You have to be very careful.
Yeah. So look it up when you're not sure. Don't just run it through a translating program. And if you think your reader might read Korean or might find it useful, go ahead and put the Korean in parentheses after the English version of the word.
Right.
But do make sure that you Romanize it to avoid confusion for anybody who can't read Korean.
Correct. So, if you caught all of the Hangul in English document errors, which should be easy, it will look like this.
Yeah.
Boom.
There were only 2.
Yeah.
Next.
So, number 7, also quite important, don't make informal word choices. Well, what do we mean by that?
Let's see.
Ah,
Words like gonna, wanna, gotta. I gotta go. I
Right.
wanna do it.
right. And here, I'd say many students learn that words like gonna or wanna are more natural for native speakers, and so with good intentions, they'll put that into their writing. Now, in speaking, maybe using these words in a lot of situations will seem more natural in speaking.
In speaking.
Right, but it's important to make the distinction. In writing, it will look very unprofessional.
Now, the next one is contractions, and this is something that some people I've taught were surprised to learn. Contractions do this too.
That's right. Using contractions in a piece of formal writing will make it look less formal, less professional.
That's right. And in some situations, that's fine if you have a good relationship with the person you're writing to. But if you're handing something in to your professor, or if you're writing to somebody you don't know well, then don't.
That's correct.
So it's fine to use them in speaking situations, but in writing situations, be a little more careful because the rules are a little more strict.
That's correct.
And what do we do about these words?
Well, we just write them out in their full form. So rather than saying gonna, we would say going to. Wanna, we would say want to. And rather than saying it's, we would say it is.
Yeah, and so forth.
So forth.
So those errors, there were quite a few. Contractions like it's and there and don't, you're gonna, I wanna know.
Right.
This one is a subtle one, and a lot of people don't even notice it,
That's right.
but it does make your writing less formal. Next one.
Another biggie. Don't start your sentences with words like and, but, so.
Now this is hard because it is totally okay to start a sentence in Korean with kurigo or kuroshiman.
그러나, etc., etc.,
Yeah,
etc.
It's completely okay in Korean. So if you're thinking in Korean while you write in English, this is an easy mistake to make.
Right.
But these are called coordinating conjunctions.
Right.
And what is a coordinating conjunction?
Well, it's a word that connects parts of a longer sentence, right? So it'd be the connecting point in a compound sentence.
That's right. So remember the word fanboys, and go ahead and write that down if you want. Anything that's highlighted in purple is probably important. And fanboys stands for
and, nor,
but,
or,
yet,
and so.
These words do not belong at the beginning of a sentence. They
Right.
belong in the middle of a longer sentence.
That's correct. So,
And don't forget the comma. However, the nice thing about these words is there's an easy replacement for the most common ones that we see at the beginning of a sentence.
right. So, instead of using and, you could use terms like also or in addition.
Don't forget the comma. There should be a comma after them.
That's right.
Instead of but, we
could-
can use however.
Yeah.
And for so, the third most common one.
Is therefore, comma, or as a result, comma.
Yeah, don't forget the comma.
Yeah.
Now, this is a common mistake, and this is one of the style questions. Starting sentences with conjunctions is just not beautiful writing, especially if you have 2 or 3 or 4 in a row that start with a conjunction.
Yeah.
You end up with just too many short sentences, one after the other, and the rhythm is bad. It doesn't sound nice. It's just not beautiful writing.
Yeah, when I see many, many sentences, especially when they begin with and or I guess but especially many sentences in a row which begin with and, it seems very cluttered. It is just difficult and not especially pleasant to read. So, avoid that. If you found all of the coordinating conjunction errors in the document, it will look like this.
There were quite a few. The next problem is line spacing. Now, some of you probably noticed that the document we were looking at the beginning There was no pattern to how often the writer used the enter key. Some lines had 3 extra spaces between, some lines came right after the line before it.
Right.
But there is a rule in academic writing, and this is standard for a lot of types of writing, that we should double space.
That's right. And line spacing, it's easier to read, but also it's easier to grade for your professor. When I have students single spacing documents for me, it's very difficult for me to write any notes on their paper and
or put corrections in if there's a mistake.
Right. It gets very frustrating very quickly and it hurts their grades.
It also hurts my eyes.
Yeah.
A double space means 1 line of writing and 1 line of empty space, and you can also do this when you're writing in a notebook. Just write on 1 line and then leave an empty line.
Right. Now, the important thing to remember is you want to space your writing, double space your writing, not by hitting the enter key twice every time, but rather by setting this in your document settings or changing this in your document settings. Let's take a look at that.
And once you learn how to change your document settings, we really recommend that you learn how to do that in at least one global standard word processor, one of the Microsoft or Google Documents or the Mac Pages.
Right.
At least one global standard word processor, just in case you're applying to a global company that doesn't use the Hangul programs.
Right, or if you're applying to graduate school in another country or you're abroad, any of those things.
Let's take a look for a second at how to do that in your document settings. Most word processors, somewhere in the commands bar, have something that looks like this.
Right.
And there's an arrow and some lines.
And
if you click on it, you can choose how much space you put between the lines of text in your writing. So I can highlight this. If I change it to 1.5, they move farther apart. Double space is what you want.
Right.
So here we see totally irregular spaces between lines. There's no pattern or rule.
Right. That would be very difficult for me to read.
Yes. And this is what single-spaced writing looks like. The words are so close together, there's no room here for me to put notes or corrections.
Right. Now, you will see this type of spacing a lot of time in like a newspaper, for example.
Yep.
Oftentimes use single space or almost single space.
Magazines as well, because paper is expensive when you're printing 20,000 or 100,000 copies of something.
Right.
There's some kinds of business writing where you single space also, and some kinds of reports, but when you get into that situation, learn the rules for the writing situation you are in.
Yeah, most of the time if you're submitting an article to an academic journal, they will specify exactly not only spacing, but what type of font, what type of font size, and your spacing size. So always be aware of those rules and make sure you know them in advance.
Yes. Now this is what double spacing looks like. There's a lot more space. It's easier on my eyes, and there's room here for me to fix an error or to add some feedback.
Exactly.
Finally, as we said before, do not use enter keys to start new lines. Use the document settings instead of the enter key, because sometimes if you use double space using the enter key,
Right.
when you send it to the printer or when you open it on a new computer, sometimes this happens.
Right.
You come to the end of the line and this happens.
Right, and that can happen even if you're just making errors. I'm sorry, even if you're just making edits earlier in the document, if you alter the spacing and you've done spacing using the enter key, it will come out looking very confusing.
Yes, I handed in a paper late when I made this mistake once in my first year of university, and as the deadline approached, I was almost crying with frustration, going line by line, fixing every single one of these.
Yeah, that's the kind of mistake you don't make twice.
No, learn how to use your word processor. And really, you have 4 years of university. This is a really good time to become excellent at using word processors. That's a skill you can advertise when you're looking for a job. Next problem.
Number 10, don't directly address the reader.
Now, this is kind of funny because we have been directly addressing you for the last 20 minutes or so.
Yes, we have.
But in a video or in a recording or in a speaking presentation, the rules are different than in writing.
Right.
So speaking directly to the reader is...
It's okay in some situations. However, in academic and formal writing, we want to avoid speaking directly to the reader. And by that, I mean we want to avoid using the word you.
That's right. So in formal writing and letters, no problem. Any kind of letter, it's almost always okay to use you in a letter. Spoken presentations, the language used in spoken presentations is a little more casual than in academic writing or professional writing. But in formal writing, it is strange or awkward to hear a writer speak directly to the reader in English. And this rule might be different in other languages, but in English it's awkward and strange.
And I would even go farther and say it's also a little bit strange to use the word I.
Now you're getting ahead of the slideshow, Barney.
Oh, sorry about that. I was very enthusiastic about that.
You're getting ahead of the slideshow. But when we use you, if you visit, do you know, have you been to?
How could we fix this?
Speaking to the reader like that, no direct questions. Have you ever?
Right.
Was a comments opener for a lot of my students in years past. But rhetorical questions are fine. What is a rhetorical question, Barney?
A rhetorical question is a statement that's presented in the form of a question. So if we look at in item C here, who wants to pay more taxes? This is actually a statement, isn't it? What is the statement, Rob?
The statement is nobody wants to pay more taxes.
Right. But it's
And a rhetorical question is a question where the answer is obvious, so you don't have to guess what the answer is.
right.
Where an answer is not expected.
Right. Who doesn't like bibimbap? Would be a good rhetorical question alternative to do you like bibimbap?
That's right. And that's a question that doesn't directly speak to the reader. And I always felt frustrated when writers wrote a question to me because when I'm reading their writing, they're not in the room with me, so I can't answer them.
No, you can't.
Have you seen Parasite? You're not here for me to answer.
Right.
I can't tell you whether I have.
So let's avoid that.
Yeah. The best way to deal with this is to rewrite the sentence. So instead of saying, you shouldn't talk directly to the reader,
You would instead say, one should not talk directly to their reader.
and the word one in this situation, it's a little stiff, a little over formal. So another way to do it is to change the subject of the sentence and instead say something like, addressing the reader is a bad idea, or it is not a good idea to address the reader.
Right.
So you can take out the you and put one instead, or rearrange the sentence and say something like, it's a bad idea, or people should not, instead of you should not.
Right.
Now, Barney.
I've been waiting for number 4 for a long time. Most academic writing also avoids using the first person, meaning I, we, our, or us. And I have to say, this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I see many students will refer to themselves in the first person a lot in writing essays, and to me it looks very unprofessional, it looks very informal. It's the sort of thing I might do if I was writing a letter, but in academic writing I find it very off-putting.
Yeah. The one kind of academic writing where it's okay to use I is in a personal opinion essay or a personal essay. Other than the specific essay called personal essay,
Right.
where your professor will be clear that yes, you can use I in this, it's best to avoid you always and I almost always.
Right. So just a couple of, a real quick example. I don't think students should have to study English. You would just take out I don't think. You would say students shouldn't have to study English.
Yeah.
The fact that it's your opinion is obvious because you are the writer.
That's right. Avoiding the first and second person makes writing sound more objective and unbiased. That's another reason why news writing is another place where the first and second person are almost never found.
Good point.
Go read a newspaper or listen to a news broadcast, and one thing you will notice is that the anchors almost never use I or you while reporting the news.
Very good point. So, if you found all of the you and I mistakes, the directly addressing the reader mistakes in the document, it will look like this.
Yeah, there were a lot.
Yeah, boy, that pen ran out of red ink, I would reckon.
This is an error that happens because someone doesn't know. That's actually a rule of formal writing that a lot of people seem not to know.
Right.
The final one, we've gotten through them all now, is center and capitalize the title.
Yeah, this is an easy one to remember.
Most writing you do in university should have a title. Much of the writing you do in offices also does, things like presentations, reports, and summaries. And your title should be at the top and center of the page in most cases.
Right. Even some resumes will have the person's name at the top and center. Not all, but mine currently does.
Yeah. And once again, there are rules and you can learn them. There are cases where the title should stay on the left, but mostly top and center is best.
Right.
And capitalize the first letter. We mentioned that earlier when we talked about capital errors.
Right. So, this is an easy one to spot.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Those are the 11 errors that we put into that document. I've had a lot of classes go through this, and most classes can find 7. Quite a few classes find 9.
Any classes ever find all 11?
I've had a few classes find all 11, but I'd say about maybe 10%, 10% or less can actually find all 11 of these mistakes. If you found more than 7, you're doing good. If you found 9 or 10, you are doing very, very well. But now that we've taught these to you, we expect you to know them all. So let's get on to fixing things. Now that we've seen all 11 errors, let's take a little time and rewrite as much of the document as you can while fixing all 11 style and formatting errors.
Right. The format errors, those are relatively easy to fix and usually just involve minor changes. Some of the style changes might require you to reword things a little bit, but ultimately the final document should not be too different from the original.
Thank you for your attention. The last thing before we go, in the PDF document that we linked at the beginning of the slideshow, you'll notice there isn't only the page full of errors, there are also 2 pages of instructions. Now these instructions explain how to write academic essays. It explains it while it shows it. So academic writing that you do for this class should look like this. And emails that you send to your professor should look like this.
Right. You'll notice in the email we're not indenting. That is another lesson. But
Yeah. These are examples of places where the rules are different. In professional emails, it's okay to not indent, and you put an extra space between paragraphs. Okay, the rules are different for different kinds of writing. When you're handwriting, your writing should look like this. Still double space.
Yep, still with indentation.
That's right. And here's just some examples of how to fix the and, but, or, so problem. Now that you have these, read them carefully if these rules are a little hard for you to understand or confusing, and do some practice in your own time, especially if you have trouble with things like end punctuation, line spacing, or capital mistakes.
Right.
It takes a little practice to get used to writing without you, but now that you know, it's time to start practicing that.
And one other thing I would recommend is in your reading, when you're reading, especially in English, pay more attention from a style and formatting standpoint. When is the writer observing the rules we've covered? If the writer is not observing the rules that we've covered, what's the reason? If you read with a more critical eye, it will help you in your own writing as well.
That's right. Lots of reading will make you a better writer. So thank you again for your attention. We hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, and if you didn't enjoy it, we hope you found it very educational. If you need to go back and pause on some of the frames that are full of information, that's fine. And now that you know where this video is, you can come back and look at it anytime. And of course, in the links below the video, we will put a link to the slideshow so that you can go through it slide by slide if you need.
Yes. Thank you again for your attention during this lesson, and we look forward to seeing you in our next lesson. Thank you.